Housing and Community Scrutiny Panel. Before we start these proceedings, may I bring to your attention for some housekeeping matters, there is no expected fire alarm testing today. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, it is real, and can you please make your way to the fire assembly point in the Civic Square. Can you use your microphone, please, when addressing the meeting, and that it is switched off when you're not using it. All mobile devices are turned to silent, please. And this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and be capable of subsequent repeated viewing. By entering the Warspite room and during the course of the meeting, councillors are consenting to being filmed and in use of those recordings for webcasting purposes. Brings us on to item number 1. Apologies, Rosie. I think we've got full attendance. Thank you for that. In respect of any items on the agenda, do any members have any declarations of interest? I'll take that as a no. Can I draw your attention, please, in your pack to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 26th of July 2024, and do you agree it's a true and accurate account of that meeting for those that were in attendance? Or is there any questions with regard to those minutes? No. There's no chair's urgent business, which means we now move on to street services performance update, which is pages 7 to 26 in the minute pack. And I'd like Councillor Byers-Delve who will introduce the report. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Just to quickly note, Philip Robertson will also be in attendance to support Councillor Byers-Delve.
We also have Councillor Coker here as the other half of Street
I'll
Services.
go if you want.
Your name wasn't mentioned, why?
No, well, I didn't. Sorry, Chair. I thought I'd better come along, although I wasn't officially invited.
Well, it's lovely to see you, and thank you for coming anyway, Mark. Councillor Cook.
In that case, it might be worth us just establishing what Street Services covers to start off with. So what tends to be called environment in terms of the scheme of delegation covers everything from domestic and commercial waste, covers recycling, green estates and trees, but also things like street cleansing and graffiti as well. Do you want to cover what comes under your side for me?
Yeah, very simple. Everything that's on the network that's grey. Highways, pavements, street lighting, street signs except road signs, traffic lights, zebra crossings, everything that goes on the network.
And I guess by way of introduction, I just wanted to cover some of the challenges, but also positives that I've seen under street services in the last couple of years since I've been involved. As you'll know from the casework that comes into your inboxes as ward councillors, about 3/4 of the casework that this council does is solely within the street services department. We all know that complaints around whether it's potholes or grass cutting or weeds is a topic which tends to come up more than other topics. And so there are certainly challenges there in terms of the capacity of the team leaders who are replying to those at the scale in which it comes in, and that can be exacerbated by other issues as well, whether it's seasonality or whether it's elections, for instance. Over the election period, the number of casework complaints doubles within a short period of time, and so that has a disproportionate impact on street services in particular. There's also been historic issues that street services has faced over the last 15 years. We all know about local government austerity measures. If you look within grounds team, for instance, there's about 35% cut in real terms to the staffing budget, and that obviously has implications for frontline delivery. At the end of the previous administration, there were some health and safety changes that were made, very positive, important health and safety changes, particularly on work that happens near to roads, which covers a lot of street services work, but that slowed down some of the operational side of things significantly in some cases. one of the things that's certainly been a big item of discussion for me has been on the regularity of the grass cut on the 60% of grass that we manage for people, and that's something we continue to work hard on. And another challenge which is of interest to me on the climate change side of things is on fleet decarbonisation. So Council has pulled millions of pounds into that. We've now got 70 electric vehicles, which has been significant progress over the last few years, but we're continuing trying to make sure that the pace is there on that particular topic. But I wanted to focus on some strengths as well, which is there in the report, but sometimes gets missed in terms of the wider coverage on it. Street services over the last 3 years have seen a year-on-year reduction of public complaints, which I think is a really positive thing for us all to reflect on. There are certain areas of street services which we don't see many complaints on. And so domestic bin collections for me is one which we generally have quite positive feedback on. It's 0.1% of domestic bins that get missed. And that's generally due to blocked service lanes. That tends not to be the fault of the staff. And in the vast majority of those cases, they'll return within the next 48 hours successfully. On grass cutting, which continues to be a hot topic, we've made some significant changes. And since the schedule that we inherited at the start of last year, we've more than doubled the cuts on the verges, which obviously is a cause of concern for residents with regards to safety, whether it's on roundabouts or busy junctions. And the one that was a high priority for me last year was playgrounds. I'm a dad myself of a toddler, and I very much understood some of the frustration that's been going on for several years with regards to long grass in playgrounds and young children struggling to get to equipment. So again, we've managed to successfully double the regularity of grass cuts on playground sites. Environmental planning, which is part of street services, which sometimes gets less attention that it deserves. There's some really positive stuff around community engagement, which I'll be happy to go into in more detail. Things like Pool Farm, Building Resilience Communities team, and also the Green Community Hubs. Did amazing work with young people and various groups across the city. And they've recently received national awards for some of that work. So the first council-owned habitat bank in the country, doing some really exciting work around biodiversity net gain, but also the community forest, which has planted over 15,000 trees in the last 3 years, won an award a few weeks ago. But happy to take questions on any of that or anything in the report. It'd be good to discuss it in more detail. Thank you.
Please take your seats. Thank you very much, Councillor Delve. Can I open it up to the floor? Has anybody got any questions with regard to the report? Councillor Gosling first, Councillor Freeman, and then Councillor Poyser.
Thank you, Chair. Noted on the report was the relighting design of the Lara Bridge cycling bridge. Would you be able to shed any light, sorry about the pun, on the timeline and the plans around that, and also around the current works that are going on Lara Bridge cycle route? I believe that there was some work being conducted yesterday. So what is it still closed, and if so, when will it be due to reopen, and what are the changes to the lighting planned within the delivery programme? Thank you.
That's me, so it's a good job I'm here, isn't it? Because obviously that wasn't in the paperwork. The Lara Bridge decking and structural work is being undertook at this precise moment. We struggled to find a viable solution for the decking. That has now been done. It has been made off-site. And it is, as you say, there's work going on at the moment. The latest information that I've got, Councillor Gosling, is that it should be finished by the first week in November, but it is weather dependent. The lighting, the officers are looking at a long-term solution to that, because what we want to do is look at how we can put in a new system there, which is even more environmental friendly than the ones that we've got. They are looking at a temporary measure in between, and then I have to find the cost of the new scheme.
Councillor Freeman, please.
Thank you. So, I'm echoing now. So, sorry, first of all, I just wanted to ask, or I just wanted to say congratulations to the team on the awards. And also, thank you for such a comprehensive report that's been given in to us today. It's really interesting reading, and it's been really helpful for me as a new councillor. I do have one question on page 11. Just going to go back to it. Page 11 of the bundle, that is. So that will be page 3 of your report, where you talk of... I've lost it already, sorry. Right, so the team to review neighbourhood areas to remove parcels from meadow back to full cut whilst retaining 60-40 split. Request for councillors to engage in that process. So is that going to be a new round of engagement starting with local ward councillors, and what is the anticipated timeline? Thank you.
So every year we do a engagement process with councillors specifically on grass cutting. So 60-40 has been in place since 2021. It was continued by the previous administration. And for those that aren't aware of it, it's a way of trying to, using our data mapping of every green space in the city, identify which areas are best managed for people and which can be left for nature. And so the nature ones tend to be inaccessible verges or hilly areas, the kind of places that you wouldn't want to take a picnic, for instance. And so that 60-40 is a really important part of the council's legally binding commitment on ecological benefit. We are in a state of nature crisis, and it's important as a significant landowner that we continue to make sure that's in place. But we also want to make sure that communities are content with the way in which that's mapped across the city. So we're talking hundreds of hectares of land. And so we have this annual process where we encourage councillors to feed in. Last time, as well as doing an email opportunity, we also did a drop-in session. Off the top of my head, it was last November last year, but there'll be another one this autumn as well where we'll be replicating that process. We had about 10 councillors come last time. It was a good opportunity to talk through grass in a little bit more detail, talk about what the council is able to do in terms of casework, the changes that are possible, but also some of the funding and staffing constraints as well, which is the reality that we all operate in. And so there will be a drop-in opportunity again. As a result of that drop-in session last time, but also some of the feedback we'd had from residents, we made, I think, about 70 changes to the regime, taking that feedback into account. The important thing to bear in mind, though, is doing so within the 60-40 framework. So, you know, if a councillor was to come to that and say, we want no wildflower meadows within the entirety of this ward, that's not something we'd be able to take into account. But there have been some really good examples, for instance, in Efton Lipson, where the councillors were very specific about an area which they'd received a lot of complaints with grass right outside people's windows, and they were able to positively and proactively identify quite a significant area elsewhere in their ward, which they felt was more suited to be managed for nature, and that we were able to incorporate some of that feedback in a balanced way. So there'll be more opportunities to do that again this season. Thank you.
Just to follow on from Councillor Freeman there, is there any movement negotiation on the 60-40 split with councillors, especially with regard to their respective wards?
So it's been my view and the view of previous cross-party cabinet members that 60-40 is a very, very important policy that we have. The 2021 Environment Act that the Conservative government passed obliges councils to have to make it incredibly clear what they're doing on nature recovery, and it's my view that 60-40 is the most important example of that. But as I say, there are ways of tweaking that within ward boundaries to make sure that we're taking community feedback into account and looking at where is best suited for that. There are some areas, like I said before, that you wouldn't want to take a picnic, and it's best making sure that's being done on boosting pollinators or other types of wildlife. There are other areas that we know are very important for the public to be walking in and doing sports in, and spaces for families, and we want to make sure that that significant mapping of those roughly 700 hectares of grassland is done in a way that works well for communities and for nature.
Thank you for that reply. Councillor Poyser.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bryansdale will be pleased to know that we're already gathering feedback from our residents on grass cutting within Chadderwood at the present moment, so we'll make that available to officers as soon as possible. Comes as no surprise really that I'm going to ask a question around strategic disposal. There's a mention of it in this report, but no detail around the actual contract itself, and I'm aware there's a South West Devon Partnership contract meeting tomorrow. I think it's an annual meeting you hold. At the present moment, Plymouth's recycling rate is languishing really. It's we could do better, to say the least. The question is around that particular contract is, and you might not want to provide detail because of commercial confidentiality, but do you think there's sufficient flexibility in that contract to allow the city to move towards composting or anaerobic digestion, or pushing more to higher recycling rates in this city? Because I think that's really important, that we allow contracts not to stifle recycling but encourage it.
Really good question. I'll leave Philip in a moment to talk more about strategic contracts, just to make sure that I don't say anything out of line on the commercial sensitivities. But specifically on the recycling rate, I agree. You know, I of course want recycling rate to be higher. There are huge challenges to that, and there are various aspects of that, and we see big differences across geographies and demographics across the city that you would expect, and from your background very much understand, Councillor Poyser. In terms of anaerobic digestion, we are very much working on food waste delivery at the moment. As soon as we came into power, that was something I requested to be a priority. We've hired a project manager who's now employed by Plymouth City Council on the delivery of that. We're beginning to work on the vehicles and the capital cost for that. I've also done some lobbying of national government, making sure that the new burdens funding is sufficient, and also looking at how we can do that in the most sustainable way possible. So we are working on food waste delivery, and that will immediately boost the recycling rate overnight. There will need to be engagement with those areas that we know will struggle to do that. It will also have to be done in a phased way as well, to make sure this is done in a way that's manageable for the delivery of a new major service. Do you want to add to the contract side?
Yeah, if I may. Councillor Poyser, thanks for the question. Without going into the detail of the contracts, I would say that our relationships with both MVV and BIF are really good. There's a contractual arrangement, but I see them as partners. We're both seeking to achieve the same thing. It's obviously in BIF's interest to increase the recycling rate. When I started this 3 or 4 years ago, our recycling rate was down at 30%. It was really poor. It's improved over the years, but absolutely it needs to be a lot better. Currently it's quite seasonal. It depends on grass cutting and other waste streams that come in on a seasonal basis. And I would expect to see a bigger improvement when we move to food waste collection in April 2026, which all local authorities will be doing. And that's why some local authorities have much higher recycling rates. The specific question around, is there enough flexibility in the contract? Absolutely, we've built that in. There are thresholds that we might meet which could result in penalties, but I don't see us getting anywhere near that in the short term. We'll have to review when we start the food waste collection. We're already doing some modelling around that to see what impact that will have, and what variations to the contract we might have to introduce.
Thank you for those responses. I think they were really kind of open and transparent, and I appreciate you can only go as far as possible in terms of talking about the contract itself, because there are some sensitivities with that as well. But it'd be really, I think, if they're not already on the table, some really visible performance targets to meet around food and recycling targets for the future, and what we're working towards, so the public can be really aware of those, and then we can align those with our contracts as well. I'm sure the administration has got some ambitions.
Yeah. So the targets are there in the Net Zero Action Plan, specifically on recycling rate in the short and longer term, so percentage targets based on certain years. At the moment we have some way to meet the scale of ambition on those targets.
Yeah, Phil?
Sorry, Chair, thanks for that. Yeah, I just wanted to add that there's sometimes an over fixation on recycling, and what I'd like to see is a move towards reuse, and have some metrics around that particular item in the waste hierarchy. So it's right that we do look at recycling, but I want to focus on reuse as well.
Councillor Nicholson?
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. And can I start by thanking the Cabinet members, but Philip for the operation of street services. You know, as you mentioned in your introduction, you know, the overwhelming majority of issues for ward councillors tend to be street services, and by and large we get an excellent service. So it's never going to be probably what we'd all like it to be because the resources that are available, but it's very good, and I think we should pass on our thanks to the staff concerned. The 2 points if I made, Chair, or two questions to ask, one to Councillor Brydesdale and one to Councillor Coker. The first is about grass cutting. Certainly I attended last year when we reviewed you know, the plan across the city, but in Plymouth and St Mary, and I had very few complaints this year, which I very much welcome. What I would say, and honest feedback, is there was a period in the summer when the grass did get very long. Communications were poor. And I even think I sent you an email, probably the only email I've probably sent you, one of two, and I didn't get a response, which was unfortunate. So I think communications, when there are difficulties, you're better off being honest and open. So if there is a staff issue, then just tell councillors, because we have to, as you would do as ward councillors, we need to front up what the issue is for the public. And if we don't get any answers, it makes it very difficult. So all I would say moving forward, can you please just communicate with ward members, you know, and be proactive in saying, you know, we are delayed in cutting the grass. We're not in accordance with our schedule, but we, you know, and just be honest. Okay, so that's all I would say. And perhaps you might like to share in response, Councillor Brydesdale, in terms of what level of complaints did you get citywide for the grass cutting this year? Thank you. I'll come to the second point in a moment.
So first of all, apologies if I missed an email from you, Councillor Nicholson. Huge volumes, and sometimes things do fall through the cracks, so apologies for that. And if I do ever miss anything, feel free to chase me and I'll make sure we get a prompt response. So specifically on the number of complaints, that's something that's been relatively static over the last couple of years, specifically on grass cutting. We have that data available. There was a big spike in grass cutting feedback in 2021 when 60/40 was first introduced, and that has settled and gone down significantly since then. On weeds, there's been a significant drop. So I've got that data in front of me here. So on councillor casework specifically around weeds and street scene, in 2022, that was 169 cases. In 2023, that was 101. And this year to date, there's only been 38 councillor casework inquiries about weeds. And so I think sometimes, you know, we'll see emails coming in from individuals, and we sometimes will conflate that to the entirety of a ward or the entirety of a community. But actually, what we're seeing in the numbers is that that's either remained static or has gone down, which is good to see.
Fine, thank you very much indeed. And Chair, if I may ask Councillor Coker, in the report under street furniture, there's a review of grit bins, which I was unaware of. Grit bins have been an issue where, in the past, ward members who have wanted additional grit bins have had this option of a green grit bin funded out of community grant. I see no reference to consultation with ward members, so I hope very much, would ask Councillor Coker, that in the event that there's a proposal to remove grit bins, that there's actually an open, honest discussion with ward members about the proposals and whether there's potentially an option of dealing with matters through the use of community grant. I don't really want to be in the same situation as I was with bus shelters where things are just imposed on us.
I can't resist the latter question. The bus shelters were under the previous administration and not my responsibility. As for grit bins, I think there's a councillor present who I've been talking to over the last few months about grit bins. That we've undertaken a review of all of the grit bins and located, because you're quite right, Councillor Nicholson, that over the years councillors have got grit bins, put them anywhere they wanted. There's been no control over them. Then you get complaints that some are empty, they're not being refilled, and that's because we don't know where they are. So, yeah, it's true. I've got evidence to prove that. Even in my own ward, we found 4. But what the team have done is we've agreed this year that we will refill all of the bins that we've currently got because we're into the winter season now. What we're going to do is we're going to be asking for the policy to come to scrutiny when it's being, we've nearly completed a review and we're doing a matrix of where they should be on the, you know, the real regulations as why it's needed. And that will, when it's been completed, will be offered up to, I presume, this scrutiny panel to review it in advance of it taking place for next winter.
So thank you very much, Councillor Coker. And on the first point you mentioned, I wasn't in any way suggesting that Councillor Coker was responsible for the removal of bus shelters. But I'm sure you'd agree with me that there was no lack of consultation and the impact on the community has not been good at all. And I would want us to learn lessons on the grit bin. So what you've just said, Councillor Coker, doesn't say that you're going to involve ward members. And all I would say is that in any review of the policy, I'd like to know what the consequences of the policy at the time it comes to scrutiny. But ward members, I'm a great advocate for ward members being the advocates for the community. We haven't got the whole council in here, have we? So I would impress upon, through you, Chair, to the Cabinet member, that all ward members do have an opportunity to comment on any potential loss of grit bins in their wards before the council unilaterally chips up and removes them. But thank you very much for the answer.
Just to clarify, I have no problem in getting that done, Chair.
No, I think Councillor Nicholson's brought up a pertinent point. You know, it's all about the councillors being informed. We are the advocates for the community, so the better the chain of communication, the less room there is for whatever to go wrong, whether it be right or wrong. You know, so I think so. Councillor Hendy?
Can I just ask?
Councillor Hendy?
Sorry.
Councillor Gosling first, sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. On page 11, section 3.1.4, tree management, states that we have now, PCC is now subcontracted pollarding for the trees in Plymouth City Council area. Can you let me know if it would be possible, since presumably if you have a contract with an outside agency, we have a schedule of work set up with that agency, whether it's possible for that for members of the public to be made aware of when their street will be due to pollarded. And this wouldn't necessarily have to have fine grain information. It could be just a year in which your trees will be scheduled to pollarding, because that seems to be a large question, a big question that councillors get asked, which is sometimes difficult to get a clear answer about when they can expect their street to be pollarded. Do you think that would be possible?
So again, I'll turn to Philip in a moment to talk more about the contract side of that. But tree management is something, again, that a lot of us hear about. One of the things which I think is important for councillors and the public to understand are the many reasons why we don't pollard trees in certain contexts as well. So one of the sometimes frustrating copy and paste emails that ward councillors might receive will be that list of reasons why they can't do that. But that's an important thing to have in place. That aside, it then has to be done very much on a risk basis as well. One of the intimidating things about that topic in my portfolio is obviously, particularly in extreme weather events, that a falling branch, let alone a falling tree, can cause severe disruption, but also risk to life as well. So it's important that when tree management is done on a case-by-case work basis, that is prioritised in terms of level of risk. And generally, we're able to get an assessor onto site very quickly in order to do that initial review and then for that to be prioritised. But specifically, your point around communications, I agree. I think that's really important. If that's going to be across a large street where there are street trees there, that is sometimes done through letter so that they can get movement of cars in particular done in advance, and that's normally with a few days' notice. So anything more you wanted to add to that, Philip?
No, well, yes. I guess the first thing to say is that we are blessed in the city with a huge number of trees, and that's why we have to do new subcontracts to bring in the expertise. We simply don't have enough arborists within the service. I can't share the details of the contract with you because I don't know them, I don't have them with me, but I wouldn't imagine for 1 minute that we wouldn't be able to give residents that kind of notice, probably less than a year, to give an indication of when their streets are going to be done. Within weeks, that may be more challenging, but I'll certainly have a look and let you know what can be achieved.
Councillor Gosden.
Just to follow up on that, it does seem that you have now a split in the responsibilities where the more urgent actions are undertaken, well, according to this report, are now undertaken by an in-house team. So that would be taking down trees or working on trees that are potentially a danger to the public. And then you have the more routine tasks of tree maintenance, undertaken by the contractor. And it's also the fact that when you have pollarded, if you've made the decision to pollard trees, then that's not something you can ever walk away from. Once pollarded, they always have to be pollarded, and there is a certain, you have to do that every 4 to 5 years in order so that the trees don't suffer. So it would be handy, I think, just for residents to know, this is the year, you're going to get your trees pollarded in 2028, 2029, and this street, you're going to get your trees pollarded in 2032. That level of granularity, I think, would help a lot because they know what to expect. And I presume this will be built into that contractor's work plan, is that we know there's a certain amount of work to be done, a certain amount of pollarding. This is a schedule of works. This is what we'll be doing. So hopefully that could be put in place.
We can definitely talk to teams and see what is possible in terms of this.
Sorry.
We certainly talk to teams about what is the kind of art of the possible with regards to centralising that information. You're right that they will be working to that programme. I think the point you made around pollarding is definitely the case, that understanding of street trees has certainly changed over time. There are streets I can think of in Plymouth that particular species of trees, certainly shouldn't have been planted there at that point. And also that applies to pollarding as well, that the way in which trees were managed in the past by Plymouth City Council has certainly changed, and the council was very careful not to take on new routine pollarding of whole streets, because the tree then has that expectation, that need for that to be done, and it can also lead to other issues as well. You then have to cut back the epicomic growth as well afterwards, which can become an issue as well. But we can certainly take away and have a chat around how we can better communicate with ward councillors so that they can feed that information to residents.
Councillor Gosden, thank you for your point. Councillor Hendy, apologise for mess up, isn't it?
It's right about the grit bins. So where the council have put the grit bins in place over the years, obviously it's not helpful not knowing the location. But the ones that you do know about, is there any programme where they are inspected to see what levels of grit they've got on them? Because it's, if you know where they are, member of the public goes to use it and it's not full. Who reports there's nothing in it? I mean, is there a programme where you go around annually to see if they're filled up or not? I mean,
all known grit bins, as we approach the winter maintenance season, are inspected, and the level of salt in them is recorded on the handset. If they need filling, they're filled. If they don't, where the problems sometimes arise, Councillor Hendy, is when grit bins are emptied by residents for purposes that we don't know that they're then empty. And that's why sometimes you'll get a resident contact councillors, including myself, and say, well, that grit bin was empty last week, or full last week, it's empty this week. And, it's it's also very difficult, but with the weather, because some years we can go all season and not have to fill them, but they are all inspected as the winter season approaches.
It was just arose because some of the ones that I know about, it looks like they've not been inspected for 4 or 5 years. Yep, but those are probably the ones that you're alluding to earlier on that you don't know about. So just was unsure about there being a programme, what the situation.
What I would advise is if you know them, because the inspectors, the road inspectors have been tasked over the summer to walk all the roads in their patches and record all of the grit bins so that they're logged on the computer system, so that they can do their maintenance checks. But if you know of any, and that goes for anybody, that you think may have been overtly missed out, then please report it through your councillor casework, and that can be added to the system.
It seems to be that grit bins are becoming the new grass cutting, because my question is about grit bins too. And specifically about green grit bins, the ones that have been placed there by the community. This time last year, I used some community grant to refill a bin, which I think is in the category that was unknown, bin placed there by my predecessor, Linda Bowyer. My concern would be that if the council reviews the bins and decides that this particular one is not needed, but the community had decided it was, however they raised the funds. I've paid community grant money because they want the bin refilled. My question is the level of community engagement that your teams will have with the local councillors, who may well have across all of our patches those kinds of bins that the council decides isn't needed, but the local community does, how we negotiate that. And I think it is a little bit like the bus shelters in that there will be some debate about it, but this, if I use that specific bin, is one that those local residents absolutely believe is important to keep.
Thank you for that point. The reason we've launched this is because last season we had people saying, why isn't this grit bin filled? Why haven't you done that? You failed in your duty. So when we're tackling a problem here that's going back long before my time, where councillors have put in a one-off grit bin, and over the mists of time, those have not been recorded. Each of the grit bins that are located, and I re-emphasise, if you've got any that you think are not located, let the team know. We are working at the moment, that is stage 1 of finding out every single grit bin that we have in the city. Phase 2 will be to look at the locations, why they're there. Phase 3 will be to say, are they needed? Phase 4 will be to consult. And then next year, we will have agreement that we will do what is right and what is necessary. This is not about cost saving. This is not about any other means. What this is about is making sure that the resources that we've got, the cost of the salt, etc., the locations are all mapped now, so we have a more efficient way of going around, refilling and keeping them up to date, because the team otherwise have to send a lorry out all over the city to refill one and then drive 10 miles to refill another one. So this is not, I emphasise, this is not about getting rid of grit bins. This is about a way of maintaining them, controlling them, and getting value for money for the operatives that are doing that.
I welcome what you've just said, Councillor Coker. But would it be reasonable to suggest that we have a unified system, do away with green bins altogether? You have the yellow bins where they're needed, you know where they are, they can be mapped, and there's no confusion then to who pays for what, why, or when. Is that reasonable?
It is, Chair, and that's something, that is why I've kind of organised, and I'll be honest, I've been talking to Councillor Poyser quite a lot about this, and we need a simplified system, and that's what we're aiming to do.
One final question before I bring it to a close. I've had a lot of constituents on about the state of the city, whether it be coming up from Union Street, whether you look at Derry's Cross roundabout, whether you look from the Brunel Plaza down. We welcome the £300,000 investment, obviously, in grass maintenance. Is it reasonable, or could I ask that we actually look at actually tidying those areas up for visitors to the gate, you know, coming into the gateway and having a bit of pride in the city? Because they look a bit ragged, shall we say, at this moment in time.
So I think there are two parts to your question. So in terms of the grass cutting, that 300,000 is one of the ways in which we're investing into the service. That will, by itself, double the number of permanent ground operatives at the coalface of grass cutting. It's taking some time to recruit and train those, so you know that investment isn't spent overnight, but that's there in the revenue budget now for years to come, and will hopefully increase the rate of our regular grass cut across the city on significant areas of land. We've already seen that delivered in a more limited sense with our separated out playground team, for instance. So you know, that is an investment in grass cutting which you know, the city hasn't seen for quite a few years, and is the start of something which I hope will make a difference to that. The other point is a slightly different one, because I think it's broader than grass cutting, and I think we want to think more strategically than just looking at it in terms of grass. In the report, it mentions something that we've been working on for about 6 months now. We haven't quite fixed a phrase for it, but the idea of a summer of colour is one that has been mentioned on a few occasions. The team, under my instruction, initially identified 10 roundabouts and other key sites. We started working on this in the spring this year. It's now looking at about 13 or 14 locations which I'll be taking to Cabinet. Those have been chosen for a variety of reasons, some linked to tourism, making sure that the areas of our city which are significant for our local economy are well looked after. We're also making sure that there's geographical spread there as well, and you know, I regularly talk to people in the north of the city, or people who represent the north of the city, where those communities can feel like they get less investment in terms of civic pride. So we've started that process of choosing locations, and that will be about brightening up those areas. So not just roundabouts, but you know, the small but significant areas of green space. We're looking at a very exciting partnership to help with the design on that. And that's what I mean in terms of getting away from solely thinking about grass cutting, that we want to be ambitious for those sites, and that planting will start to happen this winter. So some of the bulbs will be in the ground so that we start to notice that next spring. So that has been in planning for about 6 months, and I'm sure there'll be various communities that will be pleased with the work they see on that this time next year.
Welcome that, and thank you, Councillor Delve. Councillor Stevens, last one.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm very, very grateful. Firstly, thanks for the report and the presentation today. You're both clearly on top of the briefs there, which is great to see. Firstly, to Mark, where are we on this grit bin location challenge? You might say, I'm sure it's not the fault of anyone in this room, but this is one of the things that makes local government look daft when we put things in. No one else puts grit bins in, it's the council, and then the council doesn't know where they are. You know, I've funded them, I'm sure many long-standing colleagues will have done the same. Are we certain that the list that the department has is the correct list? And my second point is for, well, probably both of you. I mean, Tom, at the beginning, you mentioned austerity. And it's great to hear about the investment that you're speaking of today. Thinking overall and strategically, to use your phrase, if we hadn't had austerity, or if it had been a lot less severe, how would the report today be different?
Is there anything,
How have you got?
anything more you want to add on grit bins first,
That's
Councillor
amazing.
Craig?
Okay.
I wish you well, Mark, on that one.
I will say it again. The inspectors from the highway that cover every road in the city over the course of their duties have now logged every bin that they can find. All right, that map will be produced to me when it is done. It will then be shared to people like yourselves to say, do you know any more? All right. But, you know, some councillors are more proactive than others. Some will take the challenge up, some won't. So can I 100% guarantee? No, but we will have a much more efficient service than we have now.
So moving on from grit bins, I think that your question, Councillor Stevens, gets to the nub of one of the issues that we have in street services, which is that the council, throughout that austerity period, had a responsibility, a legal responsibility to invest in its statutory services, in social care, in homelessness, whilst need is going through the roof, and that, you know, essentially having to significantly expand on that. And so there have been departments that have had to bear the brunt of finding that money, and that was the case for 14 years. And so, you know, I mentioned the grounds team earlier, that was reduced in that period by 35%. You know, those of us that have lived in Plymouth for a long time, some quite a bit longer than me, will remember times where there were a lot of council gardeners, you know, that are working on beautiful displays of plants every year, going around tending that. We do not have the staff to do that. But on grass cutting, certainly, we are putting as much money as we can to make sure that people feel proud of the communities they live in, but we operate in financial constraints that have been slashed for quite some time.
Councillor Freeman, then Councillor Poison, and we'll be wrapping this portion up at that point.
It's not about grit bins, don't worry. It's probably fairly straightforward to answer. I just don't know the answer. Western Mill Recycling Tip, so that's currently open 4 days a week. Are there plans to put it back to the 7 days a week it used to be pre-COVID?
Not as it currently stands, and it ties in what we were saying about earlier in terms of the price. We try and make the most of the sites as we have them. We've looked very much at the times of day that people tend to go there, and where that staffing money is best spent. And some people will choose to travel to Chelsea Meadow if they're not able to access that one as well.
All right, Councillor Poison, final word.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, can we name the grit bins? Is it possible to know? I won't mention them again. Yeah. Just a question on trees. I believe that residents of this city actually are really passionate about trees and wildlife and maintaining habitats, and enjoy waking up to, you know, the birds and the bees, reconnecting us with nature. It's only when trees become a problem and they turn to the council, either because trees have become poorly managed, or they're in the wrong location because they weren't deliberately planted there in the first place. And then it becomes questions whether it's on public land, whether it's on, you know, council-owned land, or whether it's on private land, whether highways is involved, whether it becomes obstructed, is there a harm to private property? And it becomes quite complex, the whole thing. I think maybe what residents would appreciate is try and understand that process a bit more, and whether there's a clearer pathway. Because I think in most cases, residents are really keen to do their bit. You know, they might not always be able to afford to put their hand in their pocket to pay for management trees, but some can. just because they want the job done. And if trees have got TPOs on, negotiating that path to get permission can be challenging. So I just wondered whether the council was looking at that, whether we can try and make it easier for intervention from residents and the council and landowners as well. How we get landowners involved?
So there's a page on the council website around tree management, which goes into some of the details around the rights of property owners, what they're allowed to take into their own hands and what they're not allowed to, and also some of the replies that the Street Services casework team do goes into that. But I can get that forwarded on to you so that you can signpost residents to that information, which I do think is really useful. That it's a complicated subject legally, and I do think there are some misunderstandings of what people are and aren't allowed to do, and the reasons for that.
I think I'm familiar with that part of the website. It's really useful. I think maybe it's a case of, and it's probably something we haven't got a lot of, and that's officer time at the end of the day to when we're looking at some of those applications that come in and how do we process them and how do we provide them with support. And I don't know, I'd be interested in having a conversation with officers on that particular issue and just see what we can do, and share with the scrutiny committee as well.
Okay, thank you all for your input on this subject. Thank you, Councillor Coker, Byesdale and Philip Robinson for your input. It's been much appreciated.
Chair, could I actually move a couple of additional recommendations, please, to that on the report?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so the first one, you've just thanked the Cabinet members and Mr Robinson, but I think we ought to formally resolve our thanks as a committee to the two Cabinet members and the Service Director for the work that they all do and the respective staff for delivery of street services throughout the City of Plymouth. So that'd be recommendation 2. Recommendation 3, that committee resolves to add to our work programme a pre-decision scrutiny on the grit bin review.
Yes. Sorry, there was further recommendations. Councillor Poyser was second that. Is everybody else happy with that? Can we just have a quick show of hand? Oh.
Sorry, Chair, I understood from Mark's reply that there's a policy being reviewed or worked up. Is that correct?
There is one being worked up because at the moment we have 0. So officers are working on a policy that before that policy is implemented, I was going to bring it to scrutiny because that's what I thought would be a good idea.
That's the time I think we need to look at. I mean, of course, we can discuss grit. I'm sure Mark would love us to discuss grit bins at every meeting. But if there's something in the works, when that's ready to go out to wider circulation, I think that would be the optimum time for us to go through it. That would make sense to me at any rate.
So that's what I'm proposing. We put it to the work programme. The timing will be dependent on Councillor Coker.
I think it is in the interest of democracy, and that's what we're all about here. Councillor Nicholson has proposed something. Councillor Poyser has seconded it. If we could go to a vote, if the vote goes against, it goes against. If it goes for, it goes for. So could I just open it to on the recommendations, just the 3 points?
Yeah, normally with these kind of votes, we would give a written recommendation and then we would vote on that.
That's
So
a full council.
What's the actual recommendation that we're indicating?
So I'll repeat it again. So the recommendation, if you look on your on the agenda, so recommending 1 for the Housing Community Services Scrutiny Panel to note the update regarding street services performance. So that stands. Add an additional recommendation 2 that the Cabinet members and the Service Director and their staff be thanked for the work that they in delivering street services throughout the City of Plymouth. A new recommendation 3 that this committee resolves to add to the work programme a pre-decision scrutiny on the review of grit bins in the city. Now that's not time bound, that's wholly dependent on Councillor Coker. So those are the words of the amendment.
All right, just before we move further on that, what's your Have you got anything to say on that, Mark?
To be honest, I thought I'd said that in the first place. I am more than happy to bring it back to this committee, but it will be my time schedule, and when it's ready, you can then have it at scrutiny.
I think considering that what Councillor Coker has said is totally reasonable, we put it down as a recommendation that it is brought back for the committee when it's published. Councillor Coslin?
Chair, given the wide remit and importance of this committee, do we really need grit bins brought back to it? Aren't there better things that we could be doing? Given Councillor Coker's commitment to this, do we really need to have grit bins brought back to this very warm city?
All right, Councillor Hendy, final word.
I'd like it seen, I'd like to see it come back again. I mean, it depends on your wards. I mean, ours is very hilly. Grit and accessibility is a big deal in our ward. So what's being proposed by Mark, and what Patrick's saying, you know, we're going to go into this really comprehensively. It would be nice to know where the grit bins are, when they're being emptied, and it just opens transparency. And
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll make it really easy. Councillor Coker, how long do you think this report's going to take? Can you give us a timeline?
Well, it will be done when it's done. What I would say is, as I've explained already in great detail, that all grit bins this season will be filled as normal. This is a policy change for next winter. So it's not hugely time critical, but I'd like to be able to get it completed after Christmas, so we've got plenty of time to review it before next October.
Okay, so I propose that we follow on what Councillor Coker has said, that we ask you to provide a report in the new year, as early as possible in the new year, to members. If it happens beforehand, that you notify all members as soon as the report's done. And I think that was sort of provide a clear pathway to that. Are you happy with that? Are you happy with that?
We're all talking the same language. I don't know what the issue is. Let's get on to the next business.
All right, so needless to say, thank you, Mark, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Phil, for your input today. All right, so we move on to item 6, bereavement services update, pages 27 to 38, your report, and we welcome Councillor Sally Hayden, Cabinet Member for Community Safety, Libraries and Events, Cremator, that's a long-winded one, who will introduce the report, and Ruth Howard, Director of Public Health, and Andrew Bynum, Senior Health Analyst, will be in attendance to support. Open the floor to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. Thank you for the invite. I have to say, I absolutely love coming to Scrutiny, more so to discuss the park. I find it a very exciting subject to talk about. And who wouldn't, of a new state-of-the-art crematorium that we own here in Plymouth. So the park offers a calm and comforting space surrounded by nature and memorial area with grounds. The park marks a step of change for customer experience, compared to the old site. The development of the park has been a large project here for our council, and it's happened over several different administrations. So I need to be very clear for anyone who's not aware that we have had cross-party working. So just to give you an idea, I've been lucky we've had one leader. We've dealt with 3-4 different kinds of leaders all the way through. We've had cabinet member for finance from both administrations have sat on this cross-working party, and it has been so helpful because this is not a politically led thing. This is for everybody, for everyone to have their say. So we've been to Scrutiny many a times for the business project of it and for the costings and the design. You have all had a good look, and Scrutiny committees prior to use today have been following us. So it's been quite a journey that we have done. We last came in July last year, where we were able to report that the project was processing well, both on terms of budget and timeline. And I have to say, I was quite hard hitting with our contractors to say, this has got to get opened. And they've done that for us. Since the park has now been open for 9 weeks to the public, during that time we have delivered 302 funerals, and we've had cremations and 51 functions at the cafe. So the park, you will see we've got some fantastic videoing to show you in a minute, but you will see we hold our crematorium site, and right at the beginning of the entrance is the cafe. I felt very passionate that we had the cafe there on that site. Very difficult for our city to be able to hold wakes in the past. This also gives a good continuity. If you're having your service, everyone can just flow up for a wake. You're not losing people, you're not trying to find different venues. But more importantly, that cafe is open to the general public. So anyone could go past, have a coffee. The cafe offers so many different details, from, grabbing a coffee, grabbing a sandwich, and maybe going and sitting down with loved ones. And we've got bigger plans to come with that. I don't know if you want to go into the chair. Do you want to go into the footage first? Because I can get very excited with this and talk a bit too long. So would you like to have a flyover of what the crematorium building site looked like? I know some members took the opportunity, but it would be really interesting for you to see how we started and what a fantastic crematorium we've got now. So I don't know who's doing the.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Are you happy?
Is everybody else happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So we're not doing the flyover, we're just doing St Luke's. So I do apologise. I told you a pack of lies. We're not seeing a flyover from start to finish. I'm quite happy to come back and show you another time. What you will actually see is, so this is a video that was done by our bereavement manager, Graham. He's worked really closely with St Luke's. And it's really important, we all fear that word of death. No one likes to talk about it or anything like that. I believe it should always be spoken about. It really does stop some myths and worries. So our team has been working with St Luke's prior to the park opening, and then what St Luke's done is they came in and Graham was able to show them. So it meant that families could understand what to expect. I'll just shut up, Chair, and let you look at that, and then I'll come back for more if that's okay.
85 to 90% of people in Plymouth are cremated. So being able to see where that's going to take place, I think is really important.
Today we're at Plymouth City Council's new crematorium, the Park, which is off Hay Road at Plimpton.
Sometimes we have funerals for a very small number of mourners, so this room actually fits 12. All the same facilities here. So we've got the catafalque where the coffin lies, we've got a lectern, and we've got music. So families would park in that car park there, and those doors would be open, they would come in here and wait for the funeral. So some funerals have lots of people attending. So the ceremony room we're going to take you in has 80 seated, but there's room for more people to stand. But sometimes we don't know, and the funeral director doesn't know how many people are going to attend. It's one of those things you don't know until the day. So all the furniture in this room is modular, so we've got seats here at the back. For your main mourners, we've got sofas. If someone comes in a wheelchair, they have to sit in the aisle at Western Bedford. With these, you can actually take out a chair and they sit in with the main mourners. Lots of families like to wear certain colours to funerals. So you can see, so we're the first in the country. It's been fixed on Argyle green at the moment because we have lots of Argyle green. Any colour that the families want, go to a light blue. We can also go to pink. Or else what we can do is just put it onto rainbow mode and that flicks through all the colours of the spectrum. This is the bit that lots of families fall out about, of whether the curtain's open or closed. So we've got 4 options here. Curtain open, and it stays like that. A white voile. So that gives the image of the coffin gone but not gone, because when you see it come right round, you will still be able to see the coffin when you leave. The grey will be coming round in a minute, and that completely takes away the sight of the coffin. The lectern does go up and down, so it gets for people of all heights, or wheelchairs, or children. The building that you passed as you came down is our cafe and function hire. There are 2 function rooms that are available for hire, or you can have one big room. There's a bar up there, so it's a licensed bar. If families wanted a function with a bar, that is an option as well, or you can have just tea and coffee.
Been quite actually blown away by what I've seen. I hadn't quite taken on board quite how big this space is, but also the high finish, the calmness in all the rooms, the link with the nature and the wildlife. I think people find funerals quite tough and quite hard. I think being able to see the space in advance, coming and having a look at the environment that it will be taking place in is really important.
It may be strange to say, but I've just felt that there was more sincerity here. It's more family orientated, and it looks at people's wishes rather than almost a factory setting. It caters for all types of beliefs, and it also caters for people's wishes.
And these sort of audio and visual options, even though there's no funeral happening today, I think we're all starting to get a bit moved, so you can just imagine the impact that will have during an actual service.
This is amazing because you can cuddle somebody. Somebody needs a bit of comfort, you can cuddle someone. There's no separation. I think it's really well thought out.
I've been working with Catherine and the team at St Luke's, I would say, for about 2 years now. So it's as part of their programme and training their carers, I come out and talk about what Plymouth City Council deliver for the bereavement service. So I divide that up into kind of 3 sections. So the first section is talking about what happens when a loved one passes away, about registering the deaths, speaking to a funeral director, all those things that lead up to the day of the funeral. Then I talk about some of the myths about cremation and how we manage that. People think that we take the deceased out of the coffin and just the deceased goes in for cremation, then we give the coffin back to the funeral director. That's untrue. Do I get my loved one's ashes back? Yes, you do, because there's only one person who can fit in a cremator. So there's a whole host of things that people think. And we will actually have an open day here for people to ask those questions and to have a look around this new facility as well.
Being able to perhaps come and visit somewhere where you think, right, is this where I want my ashes spread? Is this where I want to be buried? What sort of environment, what sort of space? And you can document that so that your wishes and what you want to happen is there for everybody to know about. An advanced care plan can be any way that you want to document. So we're very much talking about a statement of wishes, talk about what's important, what you want that to look like, but it also can talk about what matters to you. So perhaps at the time when you are dying, you might say, I want this type of music played, I want to make sure that I've always got my lipstick on, that my hair's always done, I want somebody to read something to me, and just really key maybe to time when you're struggling to let people know what's important. you have got that documented and written down, and somebody then hopefully can fulfil those wishes for you.
There's lots and lots of different views about what should happen at a funeral, whether it should be a celebration, a time for mourning, and I think this caters for all of that.
Thank you, Chair. I just felt that the professionals always say it a lot better than what I do. But just give you an idea of if anyone hasn't had the opportunity to go, of what to expect. There is another ceremony room as well, which holds 120, am I right in saying? 120 people. I just want to hop on a little bit. Graham spoke about the open day. We had our first open day on Saturday, and I was blown away with the amount of people, to the extent I ended up having to spend the whole day there just welcoming people, because we had over 1,000, literally over 1,000, and it was mixed ages, mixed people. Do you know what I mean? It was interesting. Some people were due to have a funeral there and just wanted a little bit of reassurance of where they're going to sit, what's going to happen to them. You know, I mean, so, and the feedback, there was a letter in yesterday's paper from a visitor that came, a great big piece in the Herald yesterday, just explaining about every little detail that has gone in it. So what you don't see on the videos when you arrive there, I know Patrick, you attended, but so I don't want to bore you too much. But when you enter there, you know, there's even plastic bags for a wet umbrella. Do you know what I mean? There's plenty of tissues around. The toilets are nice and welcoming. Everything about it is all down for our bereaved families, and it's about that customer experience, which we could no longer give at Western Mill and Efford. Western Mill and Efford was old, it wasn't disabled friendly, it wasn't efficient, energy efficient, where this one is. So there's 3 crematories in this one with space of 4, which makes it, you know, our costing comes down on our gas and more efficient as well. I imagine there's going to be loads of questions, Chair. I'm surmising there's going to be loads of different questions. So I'm quite happy to keep quiet and answer some whatever you would like me to answer to.
I think firstly we need to say thank you to both yourselves and all the officers and teams involved, going all the way back, for a tremendous facility that we now have. Having previously worked in the funeral trade for a number of years, obviously Western Mill and Efford, all the myths were put to lie, but also funeral directors become mourners. I never forgot a lad called David Chown, who's buried at the bottom part of 4 Park Cemetery. There's an interconnection there, and I think by putting the myth to bed, because going back years ago, the Joe public couldn't go into the crematoriums, so the myths, you know, perpetuated. You sit up when you go in and get burnt, like the coffins do get returned. But to have that myth put aside was Tony Gideon, used to be the co-op manager, started off at Western Mill crematorium as a cremator operator. So it's lovely to see how we've gone from the 80s now to a purpose-built facility that's got the room. Above all, I love the forethought that you've got that room for expansion in the future. We don't know where the population is going to go in Plymouth and where we're going to be heading in years' time, but you've also made available that space. And obviously such things as the size of the cremators. You were very limited at both Efford and Western Mill, which led to us having to sometimes undertake burials. I'm not going to go into reasons for why, but anyway, just to say, I'm sure from all of us here to say thank you to you all for your hard work, and make sure that's made known to all the staff involved. And
I meant to say, when we talk about the cremators, I meant to say that our 2 sites previously could not offer bariatric, I have said that right, haven't I? Bariatric cremations, where now the park can do that. So where in the past we would have had our deceased having to go to either Bodmin or Exeter, which, as you can imagine, as a family, it can be quite, you know, upsetting for a family, and also for the funeral directors to have to try and explain that as well, where now we can offer that service. So I forgot to mention.
No, thank you for your input. Councillor Freeman.
It's not a question. It is actually, I guess I can thank you as well, echoing what Lee has said. I had the privilege of attending a close friend's funeral there last month, and the thought and attention that has gone into every single detail for families and friends attending funerals there was absolutely amazing. And for everybody that has worked on this project, and I know you've all worked tirelessly, for me personally, I cannot say thank you enough, because that person was accommodated in ways that they wouldn't have been able to be accommodated at either Efford or Western Mill. So it really is, personally, a very massive thank you for that.
Councillor Hendy.
So mine's just slightly different, my question. So it's around the sort of cafe in this location, so you could bring Drake back into the fold when the lease runs out. Where are you with that negotiation?
Okay, so I probably need to be a bit clearer. It isn't the reason why we picked that site. The reason being, we had obviously done lots of consultation of what we needed for a city, a growing city, and a more modern service, fit for purpose service. That was the only land that was available to us, hence why we took that land. You're right, Drake Lodge will eventually come to us. It will come to us in 2050. And what we have done, we have worked with all our neighbours, if you want to put it in those terms. So we've been working with Drake Lodge, and what we've done, if anyone knows Drake Lodge, as you come through their entrance, used to be their office. Their office is no longer now there. We have built them a beautiful new office at the other side. We also have a feeder road that goes round, so it links. And to be honest, I use Drake Lodge to see my own in-laws and pay my respect, and I would rather now use the entrance from the park to get out, because it's a lot safer. It's an extremely busy road. So we've, all the way along, we have been in talks with Drake Lodge, but not until 2050 does it come into the council's hands.
Yeah, I certainly welcome the way you've changed that entrance, because it was always very extremely difficult to get out and get into that site. Is there a projected time scale for the takeover of Drayton Memorial Park? Some people has been bandied around it's 50 years or whatever, just to clarify that point.
2050 is the time that it comes back into Plymouth City Council hands.
And just to clarify as well, obviously any burials, ashes that are put into Drayton Memorial Park are in perpetuity, whereas currently under council run, it's 25, 50 and 75-year leases on the plots. How is that going to be reconciled? How are you going to reconcile those 2 points?
I'm going to be very truthful with you, Chair. I don't do the day-to-day running of the service. I do the political side, so I don't know if anyone of officers would be able to answer.
I'm going to say I don't know how Drake operates, and so it's a really good point that we will need to reconcile those two. So I'll take that point away if that's all right.
Yeah, because I had somebody actually say to me the other day, obviously that the family's remains, the sacred remains are actually buried out there, but it's in perpetuity for life, and they were worried about whether the freehold would be retained or whether it would go to lease thereafter.
I'm only going to surmise, Chair, but I would imagine, i.e. like my mother-in-law and father-in-law, what the arrangement was when we buried their ashes will stay. It would, do you know what I mean? So it would be, everybody would be very safe. So what we don't want to do is do any bit of scaremongering here. Everybody at Drake Lodge is very safe.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and echo your thanks and Councillor Freeman's thanks to everybody involved in the project, and personally thank Councillor Hayden for arranging the open day. Highly successful, and it was very, very interesting. I'm very pleased I had an opportunity to attend. The three issues, if I may, just quickly raise. So the first one, the cafe, I think is a massive plus to have the ability to have a wake on site. I do think, though, there's an opportunity given certainly on Saturdays and Sundays when it's open and the crematorium's not open, for people to use it just purely as a cafe? I know, but we might want to look at possibly marketing it as the cafe at the park, so that instead of, I know that's what it's called, but we could market it so that people know that it's part of the cemetery, but not part of the cemetery, if you know what I mean. So when you talk to people about meeting up, we just describe it, in that way. So I think it'd be really helpful, and there's a great opportunity for particularly people that use Saltram and the eastern side of the city who are more easily accessible to the site. The other two issues, firstly, obviously where the memorials, so you've got those columns and you've got people who have inscribed their memorials of, sadly, their sort of family and friends. I'm presuming those areas become sort of more manicured lawns in the future, or what sort of grass surface is it likely to be? Now, clearly it's a construction site, and that obviously will take some time to settle down, but it was a question that I certainly was asked by somebody who was there at the time.
Yes, it is being developed into wildflower meadows, so there will be some areas that are a bit more manicured closer to the site, and then those areas a bit further away will be wildflower meadows with sort of mown paths through and things like that. There are proper paths through as well, but that's the aim, and I think we all appreciate that it does take a little while for that to develop.
Thank you very much. And the final point, which is probably the most substantial point, I know Councillor Hayden, indeed Councillor Coker are fully aware of this, but we ought to put on record that the need of public transport to the site, particularly for those in the city who have not got accessibility of their own vehicle, it's probably something across the piece was never really given a great deal of thought to, or as much thought to as it should have done. And I would impress upon the council as a whole to try and address that as soon as practically possible. I'm not sure, being a Plymouth and St Mary councillor and knowing the area very well, how practical it is to expect people to walk to the site. And I think Hay Road is quite restricted to try and be putting in pavements. It might be more possible for Merrifield, but again, it's a long way, and you're crossing the A38 bridge and the ability to put a pavement on that. So I'm not sure that that's a solution that potentially people are being raising in the local community, and I mean citywide. But certainly public transport is a must, I would suggest. And it's not only for attending funerals, but it's attending the site after a funeral to remember one's loved ones in the future. And we can't, certainly Councillor Dells, that was here earlier, it's all about climate change and sustainability. So we do need to provide that option for the public at large. And I hope very much Councillor Hagan can just reassure the scrutiny panel that that investigation's ongoing, and hopefully a resolution to this matter will be found in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing the elephant alive in the room. I've been waiting. No, well, to be honest with you, Councillor Nicholson, like I said right at the beginning, this was a cross-working project. It went through planning. Not one councillor mentioned public transport when it went through planning. It had come through to scrutiny on numerous occasions. Transport never come up. But as you've already alluded to, and so many other people, I'm very proud of our bereavement staff. They do an absolutely fantastic job. So prior to going to the park, they took out some surveys of how people attended funerals. And it came out that vast majority, if we want to be very precise, it's 83%, all right, would travel by car, okay, in one way or another. All right, I'm sure I don't need to break it down to you how people would travel, all right? So, I'm going to go on that number. I was going to say 99%, but let's go on 83% of people. If you're attending a funeral, you would either go with a loved one, a hearse, in a taxi, so on and so on. All right. What we did do is we did think ahead again. So when the park was finished, developed, but before it opened to the public, Graham, the bereavement service, decided that he would bring all taxi drivers to the cafe, offer them a coffee, get them to drive around the site to get the feel of that site. So when they were asked for a booking to the park, they knew where they were coming, they wouldn't be late. or anything like that. So we already offered that service. We know that people are shouting about a bus. Over 1,000 people attended open day on Saturday. Not one person mentioned to me about a bus. All right, I know we had a conversation about it, but in fairness, Patrick, do you know what I mean? There used to be a bus service from Sherford to Plympton. You have Sherford that is growing, okay? People want to get to Plympton, all right? The demand was not there. The service was stopped, all right? But what I want to reassure Scrutiny is I'm listening, you know, sorry to say, but the Herald did run the story 4 times to try and get as much comments they could about the bus service. I took it on board. I've already had my first meeting. We will carry on seeing what we can do. But we can't run a bus service that is not going to be affordable. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to be a loss. But what we will do is we will look at every way possible about how we can make it easy for people to go to the park.
Chair, can I just thank Councillor Hayden for the reassurance it's being looked at. And for me, it isn't just about the funeral services themselves, it's about the accessibility of the facility after the event. And I'm not sure if that's ever been measured at Western Mill, an effort. And I know, you know, when I've been to see relatives, particularly at Christmas and Easter and birthdays, you know, there's a steady flow of relatives and friends attending graves just to remember the family. So it's that aspect, I think, that can be more important than the funeral itself. So, you know, I hear what's being said, and I obviously look forward to closely monitoring the situation. But it can't be run. Well, it can be run with a subsidised service, and it's something the council might need to consider. But we know that Sherford is growing, and there are other opportunities. And I know a colleague for Plympton are always having herself discussions with Citybus. So these things are being considered, and I think we just need to reassure the public we've got a brand new facility. Both the Cabinet member, officers and all members, I would suggest, are aware of this issue, and it's trying to be resolved as soon as possible up to a satisfactory conclusion. Thank you.
Chair, can I just reassure Councillor Nicholson that, again, taking funerals out of the equation, just going to pay your respects to the loved ones, out of the percentage of people, it was 44% that would go on special dates. So, and when I say special dates, I do mean like Mothering Sunday and things like that. So that was took into account as well. But, you know, I am in talks. I am trying my hardest to see what we can do. Ruth, do you want to add?
May I just add that there is a tender out at the moment, so they are looking at 2 bus routes that would go past the crematorium. So that is out at the moment to see whether there is interest in making that, whether that's a commercially viable service.
Oh, that was new information. Is that from both Plympton and Plymstock? Because generally services operate out of Plymstock or they operate out of Plympton. There's been this historic thing, as Councillor Hayden's alluded to, of there not being a profitable route between the 2 communities.
I think when one looks at it, that obviously the crematorium's a separate argument to transport infrastructure, and I'm wondering whether there's a representation we could actually make to growth in infrastructure, because obviously, like you said, with the growth of Sherford to Merivale, we need some outlying termini, shall we say, sort of a Plympton termini, a Plymstock termini. Obviously, if the buses were to transgress down that road, it would only take them 2 minutes to turn in, and the light passengers, if that was feasible at that point, whether we actually make a representation to growth and infrastructure for them to look at it on the basis of the growth of Sherford, and especially with the...
So the planning obligations from Sherford do provide a bus service. So there is a subsidised bus service at Sherford as it stands. I think the best idea is for Councillor Hayden and the staff to continue their dialogue, and then at some point it perhaps be brought to... I think this is a better scrutiny panel than growth because it's more strategic, whereas this is about day-to-day community services issues, isn't it? So perhaps bring it back to this panel in due course.
Just to come back, obviously now we've got the new park, which are much appreciated, and it's looking good. Set yourself a high bar. To continue to keep that bar high, it's going to be a challenge. We wish you all the best in that. obviously we've got the remaining sites, obviously Western Mill and Efford. They're vast sites, and many years ago, due to the old Parsons problems that we had with, what was the other? Ford Park. Obviously the maintenance problems and that it took years to resolve. It led to the park being cleaned up. What provision is being made within this, obviously, for the maintenance of the graves, obviously, Ford Park Efford? Are burials still going to happen in Ford Park Efford? Is a crematoria going to be kept in reserve? I know it would need debricking or rebricking, depending on what state it's currently in. What are you going to do with the buildings within and the grounds, I suppose, is the question.
Thank you, Chair. So when we first started going out to consultation about the park, as you can imagine, people were very concerned about their loved ones at Westermill and Efford, and rightfully so. I reassured the people of Plymouth that their loved ones would be safe, they would be looked after, and would be maintained to the highest standard while I was still in office, and that will carry on. What I need to say about the buildings, the cremators have already been removed from both sites. Okay, so there is no cremators in there. They were not fit for purpose. We were really struggling trying to get even the parts from them. They were, was it 25 years old or something like that? And then if you remember, we had the fire as well at Efford, and it was, do you know what I mean? These buildings are not disabled friendly. They've got they're very hard to heat. So you know, originally what I wanted to do was offer just maybe a service in there. But when we looked at the costings, and we've got to be realistic here, you know what I mean, if I was just going to offer one service in there, it takes nearly a day to warm those old Victorian buildings up. So, you know, I'm quite happy to be open and honest and say to you, I will be making a decision to close both the chapels. Okay, so that's in Efford and at Westermill. Those chapels will be closed. The land will not be, like I've said right at the beginning, they will be looked after to the highest standard. You may still have burials there. We still have land where you could still have your burials. My recommendation, Chair, would be that you had your service done at the park and then your burial down at Westermill or Efford, because you wouldn't want to miss the park out. But on a serious note, that the burials will still be there. And if you choose, so we have some families that prefer to go to, let's say, Efford, all right, because the rest of their family are there, and they choose to be cremated, their ashes could then go back to Efford and be buried there. So the land is still available. It's just the chapels that we will be closing.
Okay, when we talk about the chapels, what's going to happen to the memorial books of people? Obviously, people go there, they look at the memorial book to relatives that have previously passed. They can find a grave allocation number to go down. And second point I'd just like to raise, obviously there's things such as a water supply for people, the bereaved families to their flowers, etc. Is that sort of infrastructure going to be maintained?
So what we will need to do is, because it's a site still going to be used, the memorial book will be there. You will still be able to go, so that you'll be able to go and see the memorial. You'll still be able to use the toilet if you want to go and use the toilet, and you'll still be able to go and get water to use, you know, for your flowers or anything like that. And we'll still obviously have waste bins that you can get rid of your flowers that you're finished with. So those provisions are going to be there. But what I'm saying to you, Chair, is you will no longer, the chapel, you will no longer be able to have a service in there because it's not fit for purpose.
No, thank you for your clarification on that point. Councillor Stevens.
Thanks. It's very, very easy, I think, to underestimate this. It's not every day that we provide a new service to the public on this sort of level, and we hear some of the horror stories from other local authorities about a wide range of projects. So much with this could have gone wrong, and the fact that it's been delivered in the timescale and budget that it has is a huge testament to everybody involved. And before Patrick starts talking about amendments, if we could get on record that our thanks goes to everybody concerned with this. And Sally's absolutely right that this project and the box is another one that comes to mind. Plymouth knows how to do politics well, and part of that is when to have that cross-party working. The box and the crematorium are testament to that, and it shows that this city knows how to do it right. So this is a provision for generations to come. You know, we're not going to be here in 5 years talking about when are we going to replace that thing over at Hay. No, this is for long after all of us have left our current roles. Just in terms of the closure of the chapels at the other two sites, does that mean that, to put it very crudely, will the only difference visitors see be a locked door? Or are we thinking about changes to the building? So if you don't need to access or aren't hoping to access the chapels post your closure, what difference would a visitor see? Because given the nature of why people visit, you know, having things boarded up and things go into disrepair, I'm sure that's not the intention, but we need to guard against that, I think, going forward.
And I totally agree with you, Councillor Stevens. Do you know what I mean? The last thing I want to do is go to either site and see it boarded up. So the decision, you know, does need to go out for a consultation about shutting it. And then I'm more than happy to come back with, you know, to explain to you of how we're going to do it. I'm not going to see like what we see at the main entrance here, with all going around. And also remembering we have two lodges as well. So we have the lodge at Efford, and we also have the lodge that is at Western Mill, and where our staff used to work from, where now they have a fantastic facility to work from. So it's about how we manage that. But you have my reassurance that people won't be coming through a gate like that.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think you've just answered a further question I was going to ask about the lodge, but can we just make sure there's clear signposting to the an information source at Efford and Western Mill? Because obviously if people go up there searching for a grave of a relative or whatever, a grave number, you know, there's many people that live outside the Plymouth area that, you know, could have lost people during the war or whatever, doing a family tree or whatever. Just clear signposting that the new office is, and that's the people you need to contact. Councillor Cudley.
Thanks. Councillor Hayden, can you just help me with some of the public engagement related issues? The first is I can see in the report that since the park's opened, the public has effectively voted for the park, hasn't it? The bookings for Western Mill and Efford have stopped, and I assume that's been the case since that report that you've written and submitted to the committee. I imagine that's still the position. Yeah. That's why you've taken the decision over, or you're going to take the decisions over Efford and Western Mill. I'm a new councillor. I'm not familiar with the processes that you followed during this long project, but it sounds like, and can you just confirm it for me, you've engaged not just with stakeholders but the public about what services the park is going to provide and what it's going to do. And has that continued? We've obviously seen the open day. Is there a plan for more open days? Can you tell us when? Yeah.
Right, so right at the beginning when we were doing the project, we engaged with public about what they would like to see. So just to give you the idea of that old red velvet curtain, a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people, as you heard in the video, about the arguments over curtains. So we took that all on board. We had several meetings with our funeral directors. Just to give you an idea about our funeral directors, before we opened up, we had them on site. So they knew, you probably would understand, Chair, where I'm talking about. They knew how to access, how to make it easier. What we've even done for funeral directors, because some funeral directors were saying to us, you know, it takes two of us to bring a particular coffin. That's time, and, you know, and now we've got to go all the way out there and all this sort of stuff. Don't worry, we buy you a trolley. So we have invested in a special trolley. Takes one funeral director to bring a coffin, if that is a choice, if it's not a full service, may I say. I might need to make that quite clear. So we have done that. We continue of talking to anybody who arrives on site. So when the site was opened for us, but not to the public, the cafe was open first. People were wandering around. You found Graham would be going up, asking them if they were okay. Do you want to come and have a look? What you got in mind? And he spoke to them. So, and then on Saturday, like I say, we had that engagement. I stood and welcomed people in. And then what I was trying to do my best, but the waiting rooms were getting too filled, to be honest with you, where it was so busy. But I was trying to grab people afterwards because, you know, I could be excited about this. I am very excited. It's a lot of money. It's a massive project. But if we haven't got it right, the only people who's going to tell me that is the public, the taxpayer who's paying for this. So it's about listening to our members of the public. And was there anything that they felt we could have done better? And unfortunately, I don't know if I can say that, but unfortunately, no one had any problems. So I couldn't go back with any negative. So I was hoping to find something that I could bring to scrutiny and say, actually, we need to do a bit of work on this, but there's no work to do on it. You know, I mean, people were even, we engaged with people how, in the fact that when they go to funerals and one, they don't know. So if you go to Western Mill Nefford, you didn't know whose funeral you were going to because it was a bit of a swing around. We have information now, so everybody knows where they're going. No one's bumping into each other, one funeral to another. You know what I mean? You're not bending down anymore to look at those flowers, that loved ones. That was another complaint from the last site. You know, disabled people just couldn't get down on a wet, cold floor to see who had bought what. Where now it's all on a raised plinth. And we've even now got stands where the flowers could go on. So it's literally face to face. So all those details we've listened to. So the engagement will keep on. The answer is yes, we definitely will be having another open day. I preferably would prefer to wait for a bit of a warmer weather, if you don't mind. We were very lucky it was dry, but I think if we wait until probably about the spring and you see that wildflowers and the trees will start growing, you'll see a different sight to what I'm seeing today.
That's really helpful, thank you. There's some feedback quoted in the report that you've provided to the committee. Can I just ask where that feedback's from?
Right, so I'm just working out who the feedback was.
Sorry,
that from?
I'm just checking where it came
Because I have got loads of quotes of people that have wrote to the service, just who's had a service there. So I'm just trying to. Who's it from?
Yeah.
Go on, you go.
It was I quoted a number of emails and letters that we'd had in from various people, and you know, I think they gave a summary of some of the smaller comments that we'd had, really, and it felt like that was the kind of level of feedback we wanted to put in the report. But we have had a great deal of positive feedback about what we've done. I can give a simple example. We were told by one group of people that they felt that that we needed more aisles in the way the chairs were laid out, because people would prefer to be able to go down the middle like that rather than come in at the sides. So even things like that, the layout of some of the rooms has been tweaked to make sure that that's working. We've also changed quite significantly the offer around the wakes. So some of the catering offers, there were various different offers around that. So I think that feedback will continue. And it's an active loop. We're not going to collect it and then think about it for a while. We're actually collecting it all the time to try and make sure that we are getting all of those details right for people.
That's great. Thank you.
So just to confirm, CAF opening times are what out there, please?
So it's 7 days
just for members of the public or anybody
So
looking
it's
in.
7 days a week. Andrew, can you remember? I know it's, go on. Right, so it's 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. weekdays. Saturday is 10 till 2 and Sunday is 10 till 2. Saturday just gone was opened longer because obviously we had our open day, so it was really important to, you know, to either people to see the cafe and visit it.
And for the wakes, there's obviously an alcohol licence. Yeah. Now, something that came to mind that we've not discussed in scrutiny, I don't think it's been discussed with regard to the crematorium, is this new, not sure how big it's going to become, is what's called a living wake. Now, I went to one the other day, which was rather strange, that the person was actually alive when I went to the wake. And I actually come away thinking, yeah, there's something in this. And they're not sure of the correlation yet with regard to direct funerals. That are people having a living wake, then a direct funeral, because obviously, or are they having a direct funeral, then a memorial service, or which way it's going to go? Is it something that we've actually looked into and possibly could be?
I personally haven't looked into it, and I can't say if the bereavement service has. But what I can say to you from the parks perspective is we've looked at especially the two larger rooms, and said, do they actually just need to be for cremations? Could we have them for name ceremony? Could we get married? You know what I mean? This is what I'm saying to you. As the park is a new modern site, it will open the doors to so much on offer. I'm sure Ruth's desperate to get.
Sorry. Yeah, just wanted to add that as you saw the video there was with St Luke's, and that's because we've been working with St Luke's and other organisations across the city about to try and understand what we can do to support people who do know that they are going to die in the near future. I don't mean to put it bluntly, but that is the way they are looking at it. And sometimes we've already facilitated quite a lot of things. So sometimes they like to come and look around to understand what's going to happen. They might, bring family members so that they can understand what will happen after they die. And absolutely that idea of being able to extend that to having a living wake is one of the things that we're very, very happy to be able to do. And also in a sort of slight alternate use as well. Some of the things around the weekends, we're already starting to have a Friends of the Park on one Sunday a month. And what we're trying to do there is encourage people who perhaps have been bereaved, who want to get together with other people who've been through bereavement and who perhaps just want that bit of support of being able to talk about it, have a cup of tea with somebody, know there's a friendly face. And we hope that sort of work will expand, and that we'll be able to offer more things at the cafe and in the wake facility to support people, that we would be able to put on free facilities obviously, as well as those sorts of things that people might choose to have, whether it's a living, as you say, living wake or any other type of family event. And we've already in this short opening time had a booking at the weekend where the family were scattered around the different parts of the country and felt that they couldn't all get back to the actual service. So they held the service and then they had a celebration event a couple of weeks later at the weekend. So things like that it gives you an idea of the versatility that we can offer at the new facility.
Thank you very much for that, Liz. Is there any further questions from the floor? Needless to say, from all of us, thank you for a very informative discussion and above all for your input today. And like I said, if you could please carry back our best wishes to all the team and thank them for all the hard work that they've done. And I speak on behalf of each and every one of us here. Thank you. Just so as we move on, the work, regarding item 6, that the committee notes the bereavement services update. With regard to item 7, the current work programme tracking pages 39 to 42, I ask you to note the contents. And is there anything anybody would like to offer with regard to the work programme?
other than what we said earlier, for me, anyway.
Okay.
Other than what we talked about earlier, I've got nothing further to add.
Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, we had some discussions a couple of weeks ago. My understanding is that Councillor Pemberthy isn't available for the 4th of December meeting. I don't know whether the committee's received notification of that, because I think that was supposed to be being rescheduled.
We have had that. That has been noted by Democratic support, and we're looking to try and get him in at another date, as and when it's convenient to himself and his. Sorry, Councillor Freeman.
That's okay, Chair, no problem. So are we going to look at rejigging the work programme around to fill the meeting for the 4th of December, bring something forward?
Yeah, that's a discussion that we haven't yet had, as how to fill that, because we've only just found out that Councillor Penworthy couldn't attend, and I only knew that at the beginning of this meeting. So what we'd do is, as soon as we've worked out, or if anybody's got any other ideas to what they would like to substitute it with, please get back to obviously Tess or myself, and we'll consider putting that into the work programme, fill the slot. Sorry, Councillor Freeman, sorry, Pat.
So can I make a suggestion that we've got items to be scheduled that haven't actually been allocated a date yet. So can I make a suggestion that we put city centre parking in on that date?
I'm happy to include city centre parking in there. Yes, we could call Councillor Coker.
And possibly the introduction from the Chief Operating Officer.
How does the committee feel about that? Councillor Nicholson?
All I was going to say, recognising what Councillor Freeman said, is could we move the date? Because obviously housing and homelessness is very important. So when we'll be looking to do housing and homelessness, if we don't do it on the 4th, you know, if it's a date issue for Councillor Pemberthy, you know, I totally understand. Just move the date.
Yes.
Could I just ask, he's away for quite some time, 3 weeks, I think. So it isn't a single tweak.
Yeah, because obviously what we didn't want to do is lose the spot altogether with the timetable altogether. It's better to fill the timetable. It's funny that Councillor Freeman's actually mentioned about the city centre parking, because that's become quite a hot topic as we speak, especially with regard to possible future developments, so it's open to further discussion. Sorry, Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Stevens.
Thanks, Joe. So, you know, I'm happy to keep the date, but can we perhaps move the homelessness to the next convenient time? Because homelessness is crucial. And I think we shouldn't let it just slip down the radar. You know, coming into the meeting today,
yeah, but
I was confronted by a homeless individual.
Yeah, Councillor Nicholson. Yeah, I totally agree what you said is, but we only knew just prior to this meeting that
absolutely
he couldn't attend, so it was led to believe that that would happen on that date. And I have actually asked whether there is anybody that could possibly substitute for him.
Yeah, but why not?
With regard to the homelessness issue, but we need him ideally there.
Absolutely, but we could, you know, if Councillor Pemberthy is around, we can move Councillor Pemberthy to the 5th of February, rather than sort of moving down. You know, we could be getting into later months, and I think happy to move it, but don't move it much. You know, move it by one meeting as long as Councillor Pemberthy is available in February.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll try and find out when Councillor Penworthy is available, and even if we have to put in another meeting to accommodate that, especially with regard to his timetable, I think that'll be more than reasonable. And what we'll do is we may have to come up with another slot, but I do agree the importance of it. We actually discussed the importance of it in the pre-meet before we came here today, but obviously we were stuck from the point of view. We've got as much knowledge as you've got to his availability, so to try and we'll try and put it together thereafter if you're happy with that. Okay, Councillor Stevens.
Thanks. I mean, everything that Anne and Patrick have said makes perfect sense, but this is the least appropriate subject to be decided by committee, because we'll all have different ideas about dates and subjects, and nobody knows for certain when Chris is available, etc. could I, and I don't know if any of those subjects are time critical, if, you know, I don't want to mention grit bins again, but we did decide that was going to be, we did decide that was going to tie in with the policy that Mark and his colleagues are drafting. Could I recommend that you and the Vice Chair go away and do this work and come back with talking to officers, talking to Councillor Penberthy, looking at all the different subjects? Do that for, I mean, and you can consult with us, obviously we're all on email, etc., in terms of any extra dates that might be necessary and any obvious clashes to avoid, rather than hoping to come up this afternoon with a perfect schedule going forward.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable, Councillor Stevens. I'm more than happy to run with that. Councillor Freeman and then Councillor Allen.
Can I also suggest, we discussed at the last meeting about we will probably need to look at setting an additional date. So can I also ask that whilst you and the Vice Chair are perhaps working through that work plan and rejigging items, can we look at getting a date set in for March as well for an additional meeting? Because there are a number of items that need to be covered by the end of the year, and of course if grit bins are coming back on, sorry to mention grit bins, but if they're coming back on to our agenda as well anyway, we are going to need an additional date.
Yeah, so what we'll do is, as I said, Tess and I will go away. We'll have a meeting, we'll discuss with officers and obviously cabinet members' availability. We'll programme it in and then we'll let everybody know in due course. And if there's any problems with what you receive back, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us and we'll try and bridge the wherever. Okay. So that's the work programme tracking decisions. Just ask you to note the tracking decisions. And that brings us to a close. Councillor Allison first before we bring it to
Can
close.
we have another chase on minute 9, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So through you, Chair, I did chase recently, but I will chase again. That's fine.
So as it's missing on there, so we'll come back to the decision. Request that the panel members, that the relevant cabinet members provide with a list of projects that will be of interest to scrutiny for this municipal year. That will be carried forward, and we just ask that, again, you note that. Councillor Allison.
Just to reiterate a point I sort of touched on last meeting. I talked about in the past it would be good to be able to make some kind of pre-scrutiny decision making in terms of what the cabinet are discussing. If you look at our forward plan, for example, at the moment we've got on our list an unscheduled date to discuss food waste. Food waste policy has gone onto the cabinet meeting for the 11th of November, so there's obviously not time for us as a committee to review that decision before it's decided on by cabinet. And I'd be very keen to try and build in some kind of remit that allows us to decide on if we do or do not want to discuss an issue that's due to come up at cabinet prior to the decision being made, so that as a committee we can contribute to its decision-making policy. So we're going to have a meeting at some point in the future about food waste on a policy which has already been implemented, and I think we should have a way of contributing prior to the decision-making.
Yeah, this is what we tried doing in the beginning, having like a focus group, just having a meeting to sort of say, well, look, that's the subject, get people in and get their views on it and actually formulate a policy. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about? Anybody mentions grit bins, they'll be fired from the committee. Yeah, so what we could do is actually, once we know what the decisions are, what's going before cabinet, that will be brought. Can we ask that that's brought back to us? Any decisions that go in the cabinet brought back to the chair and vice chair and the committee members, and then you get back in touch with us and say, well, look, what you'd like to discuss, and then we can timetable. We don't need officers in that present. It's just an opportunity for people, a focus group, to say what you want to say and then sort of agree to formulate a policy, and we'll take it forward to scrutiny, and then from there on in, take from there. Yeah.
just really for Rosie, is there still a forward plan published for cabinet decisions?
Yeah, so the forward plan is published, Hannah, is every month the link is published? Yeah, the link was shared after the last meeting if you...
So I think if members can look at that and then obviously liaise with the chair and vice chair in terms of whether there's anything appropriate that you should look to potentially schedule on the agendas.
Absolutely. Councillor Anderson.
Only to say in that context that for a forward plan for a local authority, the Plymouth one is remarkably thin, and there are a huge amount of policy of like items that go on agendas for cabinet and other committees which aren't on the forward plan. I think usually a forward plan would be 20 or 30 items. Ours sits normally about 3, 4 or 5 at a time.
Well, perhaps the chair and vice chair could be taken up the scrutiny management board, because I think that's done deliberately. I haven't got any evidence, but generally cabinet members don't always want to expose what they're likely to be considering, because forewarned is forearmed. So there might be an issue there for the management board, Councillor Finn.
No, I totally agree, and I think it came up about the full council meetings earlier in the year, to which it was said that the council meeting was because there was no business. Well, there's obviously always lots of business to discuss and take forward. But like I said, we're here, Tess and I are here. If you've got anything you feel is important to be scrutinised, please, it's a two-way, asymmetric communication here. Do you talk to us, we talk to you. It won't be you speak to us and we don't answer. So the door is always open for any future discussion in regard to elements of the scrutiny group. Needless to say, thank you to the officers, Graham and Rosie, and Tess, my vice chair, and yourselves for attending today. Hope you've it's been informative. Please do not discuss green bins on the way out.